maximize everybody's roles and potential on this team. And I think it's set up with the guys that are currently out and the guys that they currently have. I think it's set up the best position for everybody to succeed. With Wiggins, the other difference last night, like Wiggins was basically playing the 3 last night, which I think he plays better, at least for now, at least until he gets going. He plays better with. It's in some ways it's similar to Kuminga, although Kuminga plays the 4, but you need to have other shooters out there. So to put Saric on the floor with him, I think makes a lot of sense. To put Klay Thompson on the floor in the bench group with Kuminga and maybe Saric at the 5 or the vertical spacing threat of Trace Jackson-Davis, I just thought that the combinations last night made a lot more sense. But again, it's do they make sense tonight? Do they make sense Monday? Do they make sense Wednesday when this team's in Utah? Do they make sense over the next couple of weeks? Or does something drastic have to be done? Because make no mistake, I still think the Warriors are looking to do something major at the trade deadline. It doesn't mean Klay or Draymond are going anywhere, but I do think that they're leaning in more to trying to salvage the ability for this team to get on a little bit of a run, even if that run means high-end play-in tournament, fight your way in, and then go from there as far as trying to see if you can upset a team and win a playoff series. 808 KMBR is the number. It's John Dickinson here on The Sports Leader. Let's get to the phones. So we got a call here to get us tipped off on a Saturday morning. Bleacher Dave in East Oakland here on Just Dubs with JD. What's going on, Bleacher? Good to hear from you, my friend.
What's up, JD? You know, I told you I was going to follow you over here. I'm glad you're here on a gloomy Saturday morning, weather-wise and warrior-wise. And for the record, it's West Oakland, not East Oakland. It's
man, he said they put East on my board, but West Oakland, Bleacher. I should have known that. My friend.
Yeah. Hey, good to hear you, man. Glad you're over here talking to us. So you posed the question about the lineup. And so whatever the reasoning for it, clearly it worked, right? They didn't get clobbered out of the gate like they had been the last 2 nights. And that's just a weird thing, that they were just so unfocused, so unmotivated, so flat, I guess maybe is the word, at home. And they actually came out like this game mattered. On the road, which could be a tougher environment. Just a couple observations. And so the notion of Wiggs might be gone. I think we've seen some reports that he has very little value around the league. And personally, I think it would be a mistake to trade him at the very lowest of his value. Because this dude's like 29. And so from all data that we have, he's at his athletic peak, athletic prime, and I can't believe that this is going to be his level for the rest of his career. Now, I've seen too many Warrior players from other eras go away and then become all-stars or very good players, much better players than they were at the Warriors, although somebody pointed out to me that hasn't helped in the Steph Curry era. I just don't think we can get good value from him now. But, man, that game last night, he had a little something in every column on the box sheet. He played with energy. He played with force. He attacked the basket. He hit some shots. He defended. He got some rebounds. I mean, it really looked like this is the dude that we need to play. And I think at the end of the day, there's no magical help that's going to come from somewhere else. The core dudes that we got, and at this point I'm going to include Wiggins amongst that championship core, is going to have to play better. Now, I would love to see Siakam come here. And while there's a risk, he clearly is not going to sign a 2-year with who he gets traded to. He's going to go into free agency and test a 4-year. I kind of think, you do the wink-wink with the agent and see if he would be open to staying here. And if so, you got to figure out a way to trade for him. If it costs Kuminga, so be it. He's young. I'm a bit skeptical about what his top end could be. I could be very wrong, but I think we got to try and do what we can for the now. And so I guess I'll wind this down and leave you with this. Good God, that defense was atrocious. And thankfully, Chicago's front court rebounding and defense was equally bad. But, if we got to put up 140 every night to be competitive and to win, it's going to be a long rest of the season. Good to talk to you, brother.
All right. Thanks, Bleacher Dave. Appreciate it. Bleacher Dave in West Oakland joining us here on KMBR, the sports leader. Yeah, it came down to Wiggins was awesome, and so was Kuminga. And then you look up at the end of the night, and Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson had 57 apiece and made 7 and 6 threes respectively. And you look up, and they still were fighting down the stretch to beat another team that's basically mediocre on the road. But the energy was better. And that's what it's going to take, though. It's going to take multiple players playing well consistently and playing hard. Like, this team cannot coast. This team absolutely cannot coast anymore. As far as the defense, the defense, unfortunately, Dave, the defense is going to be bad without Draymond. It just is. It has been, and I think they're hoping Draymond coming back can help fix it. GP2 coming back can help fix it. The Warriors just don't have a lot of good defensive players other than Draymond Green and other than Gary Payton II and other than Andrew Wiggins, when Andrew Wiggins is right. And Looney obviously can do some things against the bigs. Trace Jackson-Davis at times. But again, they don't have the guards and the wings that are good defensively against the quick guys and against the athletic guys when they don't have Draymond and they don't have Gary Payton II and the ability to throw GP2 on some of those players like that, like a wet blanket to just cool them off and basically set the tone of their night in a completely different direction. As far as Siakam, I would go get Siakam. And I said it the last couple of days here on the Sports Leader, filling in for Greg Papa with John Lund, 10-2. I would look to go get Siakam. He would be the player number one on my board if I were the Warriors. And to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily want to give up Wiggins to do it. Because you still need somebody that can defend on the wing. And Siakam's a good defensive player. Like, if you've got Wiggins and Siakam and Draymond, I think at that point you could be a pretty good defensive team. And now, are those three going to always be playing together? We'll see. But I think you could play Siakam and Draymond together in the front court. But last night's another example, even coming off the bench, of the value that Jonathan Kuminga can have as a scorer. When he's putting his head down and getting to his spot and getting into the paint and getting fouled, he does help this Warriors team in ways that they desperately, desperately need it. And so then it becomes a matter of, and when he's hitting the three ball, it's even more so. And he was hitting the three ball last night at an extremely high clip, and that's when you go, oh, wow, like this guy could be special. But I just like the order of the way everything was. I felt, and again, this is me, maybe we're having a different conversation tonight and Monday and moving forward, but I thought the Warriors and Steve Kerr putting Wiggins back in the starting lineup and showing faith in Wiggins when everybody else is basically done with him, I think that, at least for one night, inspired him to go out there and play at a much higher energy and intensity level than we had seen to this particular point in time consistently. Now, can he do it tonight going up against better team? Can he do it moving forward? We shall see. But I liked the fact that it seemed like the veterans were fighting harder because they were playing for each other in that starting group. And I like the balance of having three shooters on the court. Greg, we've talked about this in our time together, and I've said it. Is Steph and Klay enough shooting on the court consistently in today's NBA, where teams basically put four shooters on the court a lot of the time, at least three? And as great as Steph and Klay are, and I think the Warriors for years had gotten away with. Steph and Klay are so great that they're like having 3 and 4 shooters on the floor, even though they're only 2 guys. And so it allowed them to go with some other lineups defensively. And look, they also had Kevin Durant for a stretch there. But they were so great in terms of shooting the basketball that you could get away with trying to have extra defense at other positions and it wasn't going to kill you. And now I feel like for balance and just the way that the league is played, just to be able to match up, you almost have to have 3 shooters on the court at the same time. And I think that's where the Warriors at times are lacking. So I like the Saric move. Looney's your stabilizer, Greg. Saric can shoot it. It allows Wiggins a little more freedom. Wiggins was super aggressive. And then Steph and Klay are obviously going to be out there. Now, defensively, you can run into some problems there, although Saric at the 4 has been better than Saric at the 5. For one night, it felt like the pieces fit together and the roles were properly aligned, and it allowed everybody from Wiggins to Steph and Klay by the end of the night to Saric to Kuminga and even Podziemski and the guys that played off the bench, Trace Jackson-Davis. It allowed everybody to thrive, which is what this Warriors team desperately has needed, is the pieces to feel connected. For one night, Greg, they felt connected. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
No, I agree. I think it's fair to say one night they felt connected. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's all fixed now, because it's not. There's still 2 games under 500, and I wouldn't exactly call them favorites tonight on a back-to-back in Milwaukee, but
no, they'll probably get throttled tonight. I mean, and that's the thing. Maybe not, but the way that this Warriors team has played, I mean, it's crazy to think, but I don't feel like they're going to win tonight. I think most Warrior fans probably don't feel like they're going to win tonight. To me, though, it's more going to be about, do you win in Memphis? Do you win in Utah? You take your chances with tonight. You see how the game plays out. You definitely play hard and go after it and try to get it. But the fact that you got last night means that even if tonight isn't pretty, you've still got an opportunity to make a great trip out of it at 3-1 and come back feeling like you've found a little bit of momentum, as Mike Dunleavy Jr. continues to look, Greg, at trying to maybe improve this roster from the outside.
Yeah, and back to your original question about the shooting, JD, it's if Steph and Klay, are they enough? The answer is absolutely not without Draymond Green there as a defensive presence. With Draymond coming back, a hot Steph and a hot Klay might be enough. I don't know if I would say consistently. I think you got 4 of 4 from Kuminga last night, which was a bit of an anomaly. He was 3 of his previous 21. I mean, realistically, he's somewhere in between 1 out of every 7 and 4 out of every 4.
Yeah, 7 to 25 is about right, actually. 7 to if you put the last night together with what he had been previously, he's probably a little better than 28%, but it's close. He's closer to low 30s, I think, than he is to 3 of 21.
And we know our guy Bob Fitzgerald's Warriors play-by-play voice has been all over the shooting percentages with the way the Raptors just cooked the Dubs. So
yeah, you know what though? I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear about like if you're giving teams wide open looks and you're playing uninspired defensively, which the Warriors did. I mean, it was a gutless defensive effort in those last 2 games. I thought even though the Warriors gave up a lot of points last night, 131 to Chicago, I thought the energy was completely different last night. I thought last night was completely different than the 2 games at Chase Center against Toronto and the Pelicans. I thought the effort wasn't there. I thought they looked confused defensively against those teams. I just think they had some bad combinations on the floor together that led to a lot of miscommunications and led to a lot of wide open looks. And look, I don't care if you're a good shooting team or not. Overall, if you're getting wide open looks in rhythm, you're going to freaking hit a higher percentage of those looks than you would hit otherwise, as to if you were being, let's say, average level of defended. The Warriors' level of defense in those 2 games was way below average level, and that led to teams overshooting their typical standard, in particular the Toronto game. So I don't know, Greg, I'm not coming down your road, but miss me with all of those excuses about, this team doesn't normally do it. Well, you know what? This team doesn't normally play against defense that was as crappy as the Warriors' defense on those nights.
No, I'm fully on your side, JD. During the broadcast, I was laughing a little bit because he's like, I can't believe RJ Barrett is making all these threes. And I'm like, it doesn't look too hard. You know, he's hitting a lot of warm-up jumpers, and this is the NBA, so I think all these players are really, 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 really good, and everyone's capable of filling up the stat sheet if they're playing against a team that's not playing that good a defense. We have a lot of sound we can get to later. One cut I probably won't play on this show, but I thought was pretty relevant over the last week was the one where Steve Kerr's saying that they had a coach call them the quietest team ever without Draymond and CP3 out there on defense.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, CP3's always chatting, yapping about it, but it's communication yapping. And Draymond is the loudest. I mean, if you ever have an opportunity to be down close to the court, I mean, Draymond is always barking and directing traffic and telling people where they need to be and screaming. And I mean, he's like I mean, this is not a new. I mean, he really is like a free safety or a middle linebacker who's just, barking out, everything in front of him, playing, by the basket and switching. And he's like having an extra defender. And you know what? I hate kind of putting it this way, but I feel in some ways Draymond has been so dependent to the Warriors. Some of their players, need Draymond pushing their ass on that, like to know where to be. Like they don't always quickly react enough to be in the positions that they need to be. And when Draymond is the guy in the background basically telling everybody where they need to be, I think it makes the job a little bit easier. And I think that's why there's been so much confusion. And confusion can also, Greg, lead down the path of looking like you don't have the appropriate amount of effort. When you're playing confused, it looks like you're not trying. Much along the lines of when you're not making shots, it looks like you're lifeless, or a baseball team that doesn't hit looks dead. So I think Draymond not having the ability to direct traffic has made the defense from an optic standpoint look even worse than maybe it has been at times.
I think that's fully fair to say. And Draymond has a decade's worth of elite defending on his resume to where we can sit here and say that, yeah, it matters for a team that already was struggling to defend compared to what they used to be able to between age and the league getting a little bit bigger. I feel like there's kind of a resurgence of the modern big man in the NBA that the Warriors have kind of shied away from. They haven't really found their guy. I mean, they took a chance on James Wiseman. That pick didn't really pan out, and he wasn't great for the Warriors system. So it's a lot of different factors for sure. And Draymond, sure, he's getting up there in age, but to say that his presence is missed on the defensive end, I think would be a drastic understatement. And by the way, he's actually been shooting the ball not too terribly either. I mean, most of it's the first quarter, but hey, a Draymond 3 is a Draymond 3.
Yeah, Draymond had been making a lot of threes early on in games when he had been playing. So when will Draymond Green return is another question and topic that we can get into. It does right now feel like it's day-to-day as far as Draymond Green returning. I know he had been ruled out for the game last night. In the lead-up to that game, I don't think anybody really thought he was going to play last night. We'll see about tonight. I know there have been murmurs about tonight. The official injury report not out, should be out here in the next hour by about 11:30. The injury report for tonight should be out in the second of the back-to-back. Milwaukee, just with Jay Crowder listed out for them with left adductor surgery. So this is the beginning of a back-to-back for Milwaukee. This is the end of a back-to-back for the Warriors. Milwaukee plays the Warriors tonight at home, and then they play the Kings, who are also on a road trip tomorrow night at home. So they've got one of those home back-to-backs against the two Northern California teams tonight and tomorrow. And so Milwaukee, we'll see what they end up coming up with, but you would figure that they're going to play all of their guys on the front end of the back-to-back tonight. Maybe they do something differently tomorrow, and look, the Warriors are in a position where they got to try to get every win they can. So we'll see if Draymond Green's back in the lineup for Golden State. We'll see. The last thing I think is that the Warriors are going to look to maybe rest players, given the fact that it feels, at least for one night, like they have some semblance of momentum for the first time in a few weeks. I mean, and again, one game does not make momentum, but last night was the Warriors' best game other than the Denver game, which turned into the most catastrophic loss they've had in maybe a decade plus. But that last night was the best game that the Warriors have played really probably since before the Christmas holiday. And so, any semblance of momentum and trying to find some things that work with this current group as Draymond prepares to return, I think you got to look to stick and roll with it. So we'll have the injury update for you coming up in the 11 o'clock hour as that injury report gets dropped, and we'll let you know who's in and who's out if need be. But it does seem like Draymond, if it's not going to be tonight, there is an opportunity for it to be on the road trip, Greg, Monday or Wednesday in Memphis and in Salt Lake City. And the question becomes, what does Steve Kerr do as far as the starting lineup at that point? How does he roll with it? The thought occurred to me last night in looking at the way Steve Kerr started. And look, there hasn't been any real rhyme or reason to it. It's felt like a head coach searching really over the last week. But I do feel like it's a situation where you look at what he did last night, and you want Draymond obviously to be able to handle some of the backup point guard duties as well. But it kind of feels like he would go with Draymond, Saric, and Wiggins along with Steph and Clay if you were going to try to have Draymond's return be an extension of the lineup that they used last night, kick Kevon Looney down into maybe more of a backup or a specialist kind of a role, still have the shooting out there with Draymond and Wiggins, the three shooters with Saric and then Steph and Clay, and then keep everybody else in the roles that they've had with Kuminga, who looked good at least for a night coming off the bench, and because that's the one thing about Kuminga. For all of the ups and downs and the chatter, it really doesn't seem like Kuminga plays like really any differently whether he's starting or coming off the bench. Like there are nights where he comes out off the bench and he struggles and doesn't have it, and then there are nights where he comes out and it's like, okay, he's got it tonight. He's getting to the bucket. Last night he was making threes. I think for all of the discussion about who should start and who shouldn't, and some of the outside noise in the media and also from the fan base, Greg, I feel like Kuminga, for the most part, as a player, he may not be happy about it. He may prefer the cachet of starting or feel that he's earned that in some sense. But I feel like he is able to shake it off and basically plays the same, good, bad, or indifferent, whether he's starting or coming off the bench.
I fully agree with that because Kuminga, and to his credit, was very mature and professional at the podium last night, saying he even cracked a little bit of a joke. He's like, maybe it was the right decision for me to come off the bench because it seemed to work out just fine for him and Wiggins. As far as who starts and who doesn't, I'm going to defer to Draymond Green on this one because
well, it matters though, and I get it. When you're locked and loaded, Draymond and Greg, when you're locked and loaded and to me, the teams that say it doesn't matter are the teams that know who their starters are basically in 4 out of 5 positions. So I'm not totally buying that. It does matter, and I think it especially matters on this team because part of the problem, Greg, for this team is they've been inconsistent, and I think part of the reason they've been inconsistent is been because the lineups have been inconsistent, but you can understand why the lineups are inconsistent when the play has been inconsistent. But it sort of becomes this never-ending cycle, and it leads down the path of the Warriors not being able to – at some point, you have to pick a group, and you have to stick with that group and let everybody get comfortable with their role, but the Warriors have been unable to do that.
Yeah, no, I think the starting lineup does, of course, matter because the amount of different combinations they've had to throw out there is exhausting, and players need to figure out how to play with somebody else's play style. But I'm just more concerned with the closing lineups because of how bad this team has been at protecting leads in the fourth quarter. I thought last night the closing lineup absolutely nailed it, and the fact that Kuminga and Wiggins were able to share the floor together and close was a very pleasant surprise, but props to Steve Kerr for nailing that one.
Yeah, he nailed it. And look, Wiggins played well independent of Kuminga, predominantly playing the 3. Kuminga played well independent of Wiggins, predominantly at the 4. And I thought Steve Kerr's answer last night was pretty telling in the sense that, hey, they were both playing well separately, and they were 2 of the Warriors' 4 best players last night, so they had to be on the floor together in some stretches. And I thought Kerr got it right. Maybe waited a little bit too long as the Bulls were making their run down the stretch to get Klay Thompson back in the game. Left Podziemski in maybe a little bit too long, but Looney was out there as well. He went to Kuminga. He pushed Saric to the 5, and so you had 3 shooters out there in the final 3 minutes with Kuminga and Wiggins, and it wound up being Steph and Klay basically bringing the Warriors home. A winner puts Klay back in. Klay hits the 3 immediately. And so, I liked the fact, like, if they're both playing well and they're both on a given night 2 of your best 4 players, then they basically have to be out there on the floor together at the end. And it was the right move on a night where Steve Kerr really hit, I think, the proper notes in terms of combinations. But how does it look when Draymond comes back? How does it look when you're going up against a better team than the Bulls team last night, like the Bucks tonight? How does it look when GP2 comes back? And then it leads into the trade deadline conversation and what the Warriors do at the deadline. Do they have to clear a glut? Because you could make the case last night it was simplified for Steve Kerr because he had so many players basically out of the lineup. You don't have Draymond. You don't have Chris Paul. You don't have Peyton. Now you don't have Moses Moody, who I think was going to play had he been healthy because he was the bright spot for the Warriors in the 2 games against Toronto and the Pelicans. So in a sense, it became simplified for Steve Kerr. And I think the one thing that we found is when the Warriors have had multiple players out, they've been able to figure it out oddly, somewhat more effectively. It's been when they've had everybody that you can't figure out the right combinations, and somebody's always going to be the odd man out. And the guy, unfortunately for Steve, the guy that's been the odd man out a lot of nights has come in because others have been so bad and then looked like one of the best players. And then it becomes a question of, for Steve, well, why the hell didn't you have him out on the floor to begin with? And it's just led down the path of just this brutal, ugly, never-ending cycle that I think has led to all of the ins and outs and fluctuation and a rotation that's felt completely cluttered and disorganized basically for 2 months, which is no way to live. It's no way to compete. It's no way to win in the NBA. All right, we got 1 hour in the books. We got another hour to come. It's Just Dubs with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR is the number. I want to say hey to everybody. I know we had some technical issues on the YouTube and Twitch stream to begin the program, but we are up and rolling on YouTube and on Twitch. And in the YouTube chat, I want to say what's up to Ernie. I want to say what's up to Douglas Mike. I want to say what's going on to Barbara and Marco and everybody else. Hello there, Erwin Kwong. On the line as well in the YouTube chat. Jason and Michael, everybody. Daniel, just want to say what's up to everybody. We're going to get to your comments coming up here on the other side. It's John Dickinson. It's Just Dubs with JD here on a Saturday morning. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader. Yeah, no buts. There can't be a but after the apology. Otherwise, it's not an apology. That was what Steve Kerr said in the aftermath of Draymond Green meeting with the media on Tuesday over at Chase Center in between the debacle against Toronto and the debacle against the Pelicans on Wednesday. It's Just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson, here on KNBR, the sports leader. It's hour number 2. We have Greg Silver along here as well, as the Warriors do get a much-needed win last night as they beat the Chicago Bulls, but back at it tonight against Milwaukee before games in Memphis and Utah to close out this 4-game road trip. The Warriors now 18-20. 808 KNBR is the number. 808 KNBR. It's John Dickinson again here on the Sports Leader. What do the Warriors do? What did you think of Steve Kerr basically rolling with the veterans, going back to Andrew Wiggins in the starting lineup, trying to instill some semblance of confidence in him? It felt last night like the veteran players played for each other at the start, and the younger players fell into pretty nice, well-fitting roles off the bench, from Trayce Jackson-Davis to Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga, of course, the headliner for the Warriors with the 24 points and made his first 8 shots and knocked down 4 from 3. Kuminga was tremendous. Steve Kerr saying after the game he thought that was one of, if not Kuminga's best games of his career. And basically because of his spirit even more than because of his play. I think Coach Kerr trying to give Kuminga a nod of positivity for accepting a bench role that I think he knows maybe he was not going to be thrilled about moving back to the bench. But the reality is you get the best out of Wiggins, you got the best out of Kuminga, you even got a little bit of the two on the floor together. The combinations worked, again, albeit against a mediocre Chicago team. What happens tonight, what happens over the course of this trip, and what happens is the Warriors now are inside of 4 weeks until the trade deadline, with the rumors swirling that the Warriors are looking to make a move, and the consensus is that they would prefer, at least over the last few days, to move on from Andrew Wiggins if they can. I think there's a financial component to that makes a lot of sense if the Warriors determine that this team can't make any kind of a run. I know the Warriors want to make sure they're under that second luxury tax apron, which allows them more financial flexibility moving forward. But with Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green still on the roster, can you just tear the thing down to the point where come February 8th, you're basically announcing to the world that you no longer expect to be competitive or try to even contend for a playoff spot or an opportunity to upset somebody in a playoff and make some semblance of a run the way the Warriors were able to do last year by knocking out Sacramento and then taking the Lakers into a 6-game series. So much-needed win off the ugly losses. Draymond Green's return pending. How does that impact things? And again, the trade winds are blowing. What do the Warriors do with the trade deadline coming up here in a month? Is there some urgency to get something done before then, or do they need to see how it all fits with Draymond? And the Warriors, again, still without Chris Paul and GP2. In addition now to Moses Moody. Tough break for Moody with the calf issue that's going to keep him out for the entire road trip. 808 KNBR, the number. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line here on the Sports Leader. I do want to get into the YouTube chat here this morning. And a lot of good ones. Made sure to say hi to everybody, but also want to make sure to read some of these and comment on some of these. Douglas Mikes hit on something that I was thinking about really even before the game yesterday and before Steve Kerr stuck with Wiggins and went back to him in the starting lineup and it worked. Douglas Mikes writes, I'm still in the camp that believes that if there are no good trades, do not dump Wiggins and stick with this crew. They have the potential to be competitive, make small trades if they must. I would not just give up Wiggins for nothing, or just give up Wiggins just to give him up. Now, if he's going to play the way that he's played, then he can't really be of use. I know there were reports, Mark Spears of ESPN and Anscape, there was a report He was talking about the fact that basically Wiggins doesn't have any value right now. I think he cited an anonymous GM in the NBA that Wiggins doesn't have any value right now. And as much as the Warriors basically want to look to move him, good luck. You can't do it. And so, yeah, I wouldn't make if that's the case, I would not make a panic move. And I think that also that notion could be part of the reason why the Warriors put Wiggins back in the starting lineup. Try to boost that trade value. Try to instill confidence. Try to show the rest of the league that the Warriors are not as down on Wiggins as has appeared in recent times based on the fact that he's been so bad and benched and that everybody seemingly has the consensus belief that they're just willing to freaking dump him, basically for nothing or for another player maybe on a similar deal that is an unproductive player elsewhere. I'm with you, Douglas Mikes. I'm with you on the YouTube chat. I would not be in a hurry to move on from him. And I think there are specific players, like, some of the names that have been bandied about as far as potential players that the Warriors may be interested in trading for. Pascal Siakam's at the top of the list. Dejounte Murray of Atlanta is another one. I mean, that he would basically come in and be a two-guard. And so he'd play alongside Steph, good defensive player. Klay Thompson kicks to the three at that point. And he's a nice player. We'll see. Jarrett Allen's name has come up. Lauri Markkanen's name, I think, is kind of a pipe dream. Although there were reports this morning that Utah is basically everybody's on the table for Utah. Everybody, according to Shams, on the table for the Warriors, not named Stephen Curry. With that coming out in the aftermath of the ugly, ugly game on Wednesday night against the Pelicans at Chase Center. So some of the, I know Tim Kawakami of The Athletic was on a couple of days ago with me and John Lund, and he said, hey, he's hearing maybe they're looking to just get a big that can score and go a completely different direction. I feel like Siakam fits the big that can score and do other things. Now, again, Siakam's not a 7-foot big. He's a 4 that can play some small ball 5. Sounds a lot like Draymond Green positionally, a 4 that can play some small ball 5. But I think you could play those two together. And I even think you could play those two together at times with Wiggins. But again, the reporting and the rumor as far as the Warriors and the Raptors go is the Warriors don't want to trade Kuminga. The Raptors don't want to take back a contract like Wiggins unless there's a player like Kuminga attached to him. It would take, obviously, both to go for the Warriors to bring back a player of Siakam's salary, and then Siakam wants a 4-year max contract this offseason, and so he already turned down the notion that he would play in Sacramento, so they're out at this point. The Kings weren't going to give up Keegan Murray. Atlanta doesn't want to give up Jalen Johnson. The Warriors don't want to give up Kuminga. So then where does that leave Toronto potentially as they look to make some kind of a trade? And so maybe it leads back down a path toward Indiana and them having the best combination of players. But it all relates back to Douglas Mikes on the YouTube chat. I wouldn't panic either, but I would look at Siakam. I think Siakam is the number one player that would be the best fit and the most impactful short term, and also give the next 2 to 3 years with Stephen Curry still in his prime an opportunity to contend for playoff spots and maybe winning playoff series. I think Siakam's interior scoring, his ability to be a passer, his versatile defense, I think he does a little bit of everything. I think he can play with Draymond Green. I think he can play with Steph. I think he can play with Steph and Klay. Again, the question becomes, would you be willing potentially to give up Kuminga to get him? Would you have to make a trade? Or would you have to wait out Toronto to a point where maybe you could get him without giving up Kuminga? But how would that look? Chris Paul's also a trade chip that could make the salaries work in a trade involving Pascal Siakam. But I like Siakam above every other name mentioned as far as a fit that could lead the Warriors down a path to being better for the remainder of this year and also fitting that next gap, which is you want to make sure that you can maximize the next 2 to 3 years of Stephen Curry, a 4-year contract for Siakam. Now, you have to be able to make sure you can get him, but a 4-year contract for Siakam, I think, would allow for that. Hopefully, Draymond returning helps the overall defense. Mike checking in with that as well. I think it has no choice but to help the Warriors defensively. I think that's what the Warriors are coming from there. Big nod from hello there to Greg. Nice recovery, Greg. Reboot always works. Yeah, we had to reboot the YouTube stream computer back in the studio. So wonderful job by the great Greg Silver. And we got Raf Corral in there as well, working hard here on a Saturday morning on the Sports Leader. Raider Tupac, Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%. Appreciate that. I'll take the love. I'll take the love here on a Saturday morning. We back. Erwin Kwong, one of the favorites, one of the regulars. JD stating facts. Energy and effort much better this game. Defense is still lacking. Yeah, the defense was rough. Still some miscommunications and some inattentiveness on just letting players walk up the court and get right to a spot where they can get hit for a wide open look. And that's stuff that can be some problems. Draymond is the Fred Warner. A lot of discussion about Fitz and Kalena. Yeah, Kalena is great. Kalena is fantastic. Kalena is really, really, really good. 808 KMBR is the number if you want to join the program via the phone lines, as it is Just Dubs here on a Saturday here on KMBR, the Sports Leader. What do the Warriors do at the trade deadline? We got some sound coming up that we're going to get into, but we'll pause here briefly. We'll come back. More of the YouTube chat coming up as well. Your phone calls, your text messages, Golden State Lumber Building Materials text line. It's JD, Just Dubs, 104.5 and 680D, Sports Leader.
JD on a Saturday just feels right.
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
The big step through. Looney got a piece and knocked it away. Reload Levine. Another instant replay three. Levine three. Steph three. Levine three. And it's a 7-point game.
Yeah, ugly second quarter for the Warriors, but the Warriors wound up pushing it out in the fourth quarter. Some big-time answers from Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson. It was basically Klay in the third, Steph in the fourth. Warriors win at 140-131 over the Bulls. It's Just Dubs, JD, John Dickinson here on KMBR, the sports leader. Hey, join myself and Greg Silver for Dubs OT tonight following the Warriors and the Bucks, about 7:15 to 7:30. I know this is a big NFL day, and we're going to be carrying NFL football as the playoffs get rolling later on this afternoon here on the Sports Leader. So it's going to be Dubs OT YouTube stream only tonight, about 7:15, 7:30, right after the Warriors go final against the Bucks. Join me and Greg Silver. Greg, looking forward to this before we get back to the phone lines here. Looking forward to tonight, and not only tonight, but Monday, due to the NFL game on Monday that we're going to be airing here on the Sports Leader. We're going YouTube stream only for a couple of these Dubs OT shows, and really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, what I'm looking most forward to, besides doing the actual show and getting to talk with you, JD, is that we have a system in place now for the next couple of shows that we know is going to work. I don't want to jinx it, but we're going to go back to our technology roots, and it's going to be just fine.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. And, again, know everybody's excited about football, and some of the early breaking news today is because of the winter storm in upstate New York. The Bills-Steelers game, which is going to be 10 a.m. here on the West Coast tomorrow, is now going to be 1:30 here on the West Coast, 4:30 Eastern on Monday. So the triple header tomorrow is now a double header on Monday, and that means we've got Super Wildcard Weekend broken down into 3 double headers today, tomorrow, and Monday. And the ones that are most important to the 49ers here locally are the 2 games to be played tomorrow because those are going to be determining who the 49ers will play and what day the 49ers are going to play next weekend as the divisional round kicks off next Saturday and Sunday. All right, 808 KMBR, back to hoops. 808 KMBR is the number. That's where Cam in Los Gatos checks in here on the Sports Leader. Hey, what's going on, Cam? Thanks for calling in.
Hey, John and Greg. Wonderful show. Thank you very much. You guys do a great job. My first year being a Warriors fan. And
Okay.
just wanted to say I agree with you guys. I would take Siakam for Kuminga and Chris Paul plus a pick. If Siakam would be 3 or 4 years, I think that would be a great trade-off. And my worry about yesterday's game is that it's given us false hope. We had a record 5 turnovers, few turnovers, and we had a hot shooting toward the end, and I'm worried that we can't keep a not great Bulls team less than 120 points. And people say, oh, well, Draymond is not in. Yeah, Draymond definitely provides great defense, but does he provide you 10, 15 points of defense, of less scoring? Can we keep a team below 120? I don't know. A mediocre team? That's what I'm concerned about a lot. Even if we do have Paul back in, and we do have Moody and GP2, Wiggins did better, but his defense has been really poor. So we don't have defense at all to keep teams low, and we don't have the scoring to keep our points above them, even when we start blowing them out. Because we don't really have that one-on-one mentality, and everybody kind of looks around and waits for Steph to do it, and we don't have game makers who can take guys to the hoop and win that one-on-one showdown like Siakam can.
Thanks, Cam. Appreciate it. Good phone call from Cam checking in. Look, I hear you on the false hope thing. I think that's a fair point to bring up, and as excited as I think people were for last night, it's one game against a mediocre team. I will say this as far as the shooting. Hot shooting for the Bulls outshot their skis last night too. So if you want to say the Warriors did The Bulls did too, so I think that kind of canceled out. As far as the low turnovers, that was a bit of an outlier, but that also translates to bad defense. The Bulls didn't play great defense last night either, and the Warriors were able to really take advantage of that. I mean, really, Kuminga was the only one that shot, I think, over his skis. I mean, you can say Steph and Clay did, but Steph and Clay have put up 6 and 7 3-point make games a lot throughout the course of their career. Kuminga doesn't have too many 4-for-4s from 3-point range, so I hear you on that one. But as far as the reasons for the poor defense, I mean, Draymond's part of it, but the other part of it is, and I think this is why some nights the Warriors don't have enough offense, and some nights the Warriors don't have enough defense, and typically the nights where they don't have enough offense, maybe they play better defense, they play worse defense. The reality for the Warriors, and this gets back to a lot of what the problems have been over the last couple of weeks here, they don't have enough two-way players. They don't. Like, Kevon Looney is a good defensive player, not much offense. Draymond Green, when he's right, even though he's not scoring, is a two-way player because he helps Stephen Curry and he helps unlock the Warriors' offense. So Draymond's a two-way guy. When Wiggins is right, he's a two-way guy, but Wiggins has not been a two-way guy because his offense has been terrible of late. Klay Thompson, at times, has been either, but rarely both. Right? There's been times where Klay Thompson plays great offensively, but defensively he has some much more difficult matchups now than he has in like, he used to be a bona fide two-way player every night. Now there's some matchups where he still plays pretty well defensively, and there's some matchups where he gets cooked defensively. And the offensive game for Klay is more up and down. Steph is not ever considered to be a bona fide two-way player, does the best he can defensively, but he's predominantly, obviously, one of the greatest offensive players of all time. Trayce Jackson-Davis, he's got the potential to be a two-way, helping the Warriors with some easy buckets on the inside and defending. Kuminga really has not been. Kuminga's been a pretty terrible defensive player this year. I think that's been the underrated, under-discussed reason as to why Kuminga hasn't always played as much as people would want. His team defense is horrendous for the most part and has been in a lot of games. And so Kuminga basically has been, and he'll flash and block a shot, and again, he'll make you think he's playing better defense than he is, but his help defense and team defense has not been good. And so I think for the most part, Kuminga's been not a two-way player. I think Kuminga has been an offensive plus predominantly over the course of the last month, but he has not always been a defensive plus, and he was a huge part of the awful starts that the Warriors got off to defensively against Toronto and the Pelicans. Everybody was, but he, especially against Toronto, got cooked on switches, on inability to step up, on poor rotations. Like, he was a big part when you go back and watch it as why Toronto got off to that big start, and him and Wiggins together, with Wiggins kind of pointing to Kuminga to do certain things that he wasn't doing. So, again, not to belabor it, but the point being Kuminga's been much more of an offensive player than a defensive player on the positive side. GP2, great defensive player. Doesn't always have the offensive game. Chris Paul, at times, awful defensive matchup, but really good offensive player that helps everybody get. Again, you can go up and down the entire roster. Podziemski at times has been a little bit of both. He's been good defensively and takes charges and brings hustle and energy, but then there's been times where he's not shot the ball well and not been, lately he's slumping offensively. And so there just has not been enough consistent two-way players on this roster. That's another vote for Siakam, by the way, because Siakam walks onto this Golden State Warriors team as a two-way player, as a player that's a really good defender and as a player that brings an element offensively that I think really is complementary to the other pieces that the Warriors have on their roster. But thanks for the call, Cam. I think any hope right now, given as bleak as the last week and a half has looked, is probably a good thing. But it all could get knocked away as soon as 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight, because the Warriors are going to take on the Bucks, and that's a whole different deal than playing Chicago. And the Bucks have been playing as well as anybody, and the Bucks have been thumping teams in the Eastern Conference, including the top currently seeded Celtics. They are 26-12 right now. Milwaukee, and 17-4 at home. So tonight has the potential to be ugly. Hell, tonight has the potential for the Warriors to play great and they still lose. Both of those things are on the table. But for the Warriors, to me, it's not so much about tonight in Milwaukee. For me, it's more about, can this Warriors team bounce back if things don't go well tonight and recapture what they had last night in Memphis and in Utah and get those games, come back with a 3-1 road trip. 808 KMBR, Mark in Millbrae is next here on Just Dubs on a Saturday morning on the Sports Leader. Hey, Mark.
Hey, what's up, man? To me, the thing that really stands out most disappointing about this season so far that none of us expected is how poorly the Warriors have played at home. I mean, you've had a front-loaded amount of home games at Chase Center, which you've dominated. Even in your average season last year, you were still one of the best home teams in the league. And to see how many games this year they've been either blown out or just kicked away is inexcusable, and why they're positioned they are right now. I mean, you win even 4 or 5 of those games that you should have had, you're probably in the top 8. So the Warriors really going to look back on the season and see how many of these home games they've really choked away or even no-showed and booed a couple of those times, which they deservedly so, is going to be jarring. As far as right now here, last night you got a game ball to the Warriors because that's typically with the way the season's been going. They would have given that game away. Bulls were really rolling. They were up big at half. A big retirement night there for their Jordan era teams, and you think the Warriors are going to flounder. And really, the way they really took over that game there, and even when the Bulls really made a late run there with Kobe White and Curry, I love the Warriors really. Curry and Clay really put the nail down on them and close it out, especially with the way the Bulls were really playing some good basketball. So I'm hoping at least they can go 3, maybe win 1 or 2 of these games. I don't count them, barring some miracle upset, to beat Milwaukee. The Memphis game, that's a game they should win. I know Memphis is playing even somewhat decent without Ja, but that's a game you got to win. Utah, I know, is red hot right now, but they always play Utah well in the win. But going forward, until this trade deadline, if you're the Warriors and Kerr, you really just got to hope that these guys, you get production from any way you can. Last night, I thought Kuminga was one of his better games in terms of his efficiency. Curry and Thompson really played. Shooting-wise, they weren't, but they were at least they were making shots when they needed it. But just overall, from your perspective, do you think Kerr is just going to try to mix and match these lineups to see whoever's giving him production is going to play? Because outside of Curry, it's really, and sometimes with him now, it's going to be hit or miss. What are your thoughts on going forward here into this trade deadline, which we expect to make some moves here with Dunleavy?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I hope Steve Kerr keeps the veterans in there for the time being. I hope he keeps Wiggins in there. I hope he rides with Steph and Clay are going to be out there. Draymond's going to be out there when he comes back. I would ride with Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, and then the 5th can be up for debate. The 5th can be I would not have the 5th in that lineup be Kuminga as a starter. I would keep him and Wiggins for the most part separated unless they're both having good games like they were last night. And so then you can maybe put them together at that point. But I would look to have those 4 on the court, and then the 5th can be Saric, the 5th can be Looney, the 5th can be maybe Pajemski, the 5th can be CP3. You can figure out who the 5th is based on matchup, but I think the foundation has to be those other 4, and I think you have to, for the most part, put the bench players in positions to succeed by knowing they're going to be bench players and accepting it and accepting the fact that you can still come in as Kuminga did, and Kuminga gets a game ball for last night for the way that he played, and it probably wasn't easy, although, again, I think a lot of the conversations that have been had between him and the coaching staff over the last week, hopefully it goes down to lead toward a greater understanding. Kuminga has sounded incredibly mature, not just last night, but even last week in the aftermath of his agent or his camp leaking to The Athletic that he'd lost faith in Kerr. And so they talked it out, and he had a
Hey, JD, sorry to cut you off, but we do have a little bit of breaking news because you said the injury report was coming out.
We got that injury report. We got that injury.
Has been ruled out for rest for tonight.
Yeah, we got that injury report. So the Warriors are punting on the game tonight in Milwaukee. And I'm looking at no Draymond Green as well as he continues his return to competition reconditioning. So, yeah, that 11:30 injury report that I had referenced earlier in the program is out. And so, yeah, no Stephen Curry for the Warriors tonight as he rests on the second of a back-to-back. And the Warriors basically, packing it in, play the young guys some. I think we're going to see Podziemski play some point guard tonight, which we haven't seen. But get Steph rested and ready to go for these next couple of games moving forward here, and try to make sure you get the wins against the teams, Greg, that you've got to feel you should beat in Memphis and in Utah. Though Utah's playing excellent basketball of late.
No, I think if your goal is to try to go 3-1 on this road trip, being realistic, this isn't a bad idea. And not only is it good to get Steph Curry right and not overwork him, but let's think about these young players like a Brandon Podziemski getting to get some reps at point guard. The Milwaukee Bucks, as good as they are, don't defend that well. Now, obviously, you got Giannis in there, who's a big presence, but by and large, they have not been a very good defensive team for all that upper echelon of the NBA. I think this is a good chance to get some of these other guys a chance to just let it fly. Bet the over.
Bet the over on what? On points?
Point total.
For who?
Point total for everybody. Combined. It'll be like.
You think it'll be an offense? You think it'll be an offense? I don't know. I think the Warriors are going to struggle to score.
I don't think the Bucks are going to struggle to score.
No, they will not. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe the Bucks lay off enough. We'll have to get that total. We'll have to get that. We'll have to find that total. So yeah, that obviously changes things. And look, I don't have an issue with Steph not playing tonight. It does stunt the momentum, but at least you get the win and you get Steph a little bit of a break. And then you come back and you try to go at it on Monday and on Wednesday and moving forward here. So 808 KMBR, if you got a problem with Steph Curry resting tonight in Milwaukee, he's carried such a load to this point. And, look, it's different times for the Warriors. I hate to say it, but it's different times. I mean, it's times now. We used to see teams do this against the Warriors all the time where it was like, oh, you're not coming into Oracle and beating the Warriors over in Oakland when they were 73-9. They had Durant. Teams would routinely rest their players against the Warriors, in particular in games in the Bay, and then basically go try to win the other games on their trip. And so I think you're seeing what the Warriors, they're just, all right, probably not winning this one tonight. And let the young guys play, let them get out there and stretch their legs a little bit. If it works out, so be it. But it's basically found money if they do, and then that allows Stephen Curry to be fresh and get back get back on a roll here moving forward on Monday. So yeah, looking at that injury report, the Bucks are playing everybody tonight. Only Jay Crowder is out. No Draymond Green return. Moses Moody out for the entire road trip with the left calf strain. And then Chris Paul and Gary Payton II obviously remain out as well. A couple of minutes here as we look at the YouTube chat, getting back to it here on KMBR, the sports leader. Hello there, chiming in. Agreed, JD. The vets set the tempo. The vets have to set the tempo for this Warriors team. And so, I don't know whether it was they felt they wanted to go out together, if this was some kind of a last stand, but it did feel like last night was kind of a last stand. Woodpit 420. Wiggins looked great last night. Really strange he's this inconsistent. There's no excuses for Andrew Wiggins tonight. Who's playing, who's not playing. No excuses for Andrew Wiggins to not come out and play as hard as he did last night. That's the big thing. He's got to have his ability to step up and get the job done. Rockin' New Era 84, good morning to you, sir. Do you think Wiggins might have a sense of urgency being woken up with the trade rumors? Yeah, I think that's a possibility, but that can work in two different ways, right? It can work in a way where a player will be rattled by it, and I think Wiggins at times has shown himself to be a little rattled maybe by something like that, or his personality type would lead you to think that maybe he would be a little rattled by that, but he has not been, and maybe he has been recently, but the vote of confidence and going back into the starting lineup, maybe that had some impact. I mean, that's all speculative at this point, but Irwin Kwong, Kerr trying to build Wiggins' trade value, I think that could be part of it. Show some confidence that the organization is having confidence in him, which allows the rest of the league to not think that the Warriors are just going to give up on him basically for nothing, even if the Warriors would be willing to give up on him basically for nothing. It's all a situation where there's bluffs being called and messages being sent and all of those kinds of things in terms of the court of public perception as it relates to the standing for these teams as they approach the deadline. All right, 808 KMBR is the number. We still got time for a couple of more phone calls. We will get back into the YouTube chat. Appreciate everybody who's hopped in amid some technical issues at the beginning of the program on YouTube. It's just Dubs with JD here at KMBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
You hit that guy. He shouldn't have been standing there.
Just Dubs with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Steve Kerr going veterans a little bit. Wiggins a good look and dropping in a three.
They ran that cross screen to get the ball in the post. They almost turned it over there, but the whole defense almost was in the paint, so they kicked it out. Wiggins had plenty of time.
Yeah, big night for Andrew Wiggins. Warriors get the win 140-131. Final segment, Just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson here on KNBR, the sports leader, flying through the Saturday morning here as the Warriors improve to 18-20. No Steph Curry tonight. The breaking news within the last 15 minutes. Steph resting tonight in Milwaukee. Draymond Green will not make his return tonight in Milwaukee either. Warriors without Moses Moody still, Chris Paul, and Gary Payton II. This is the third game on the season that Stephen Curry will miss, as Steph has not missed nearly the game. Missed 26 last year, only 3 to this point, and that is another thing that puts the Warriors in a little bit of a danger zone. The fact that they're under 500 with Steph playing in all but 2 of these first 38 games, and it'll be 3 of 39 as we approach the halfway mark. Going to be at the halfway mark of the season on Wednesday following the game in Utah. 808 KNBR is the number. What are the Warriors going to do at the trade deadline? Is last night a bunch of false hope? Mike in Brentwood gets us going on the phones here in our final segment on the Sports Leader. Hey, what's going on, Mike?
Hey, JD. Thank you for taking my call.
You got it, man.
Hey, you know what? I always tell my kids and my grandkids karma's undefeated. I probably have never seen a shooting performance that the Bulls put on us in the second quarter. I believe they were 18 for 23 with 9 threes. I mean, they could not miss. I honestly, the Warriors, have seen them shoot amazing quarters. But last night, that second quarter was unbelievable. Then halftime came. My brother was at the game. He lives in Chicago. And what they did to that poor lady, even though, you know, Jerry Krause had his detractors, but what they did to that poor lady, my brother sits fairly close to the court. He was telling me that coaches and players and people on the court, officials and front office people they were yelling and screaming at people that were booing, and there were people yelling and screaming back at the players. He said it was very, very, very chaotic. He said he couldn't believe what he was watching. And what did Chicago come out and do in the third? They got smoked. There was no life. Yeah. I think the Warriors, was 45-18 in the third quarter?
48-20, Mike. 48-20.
48-20. He said that there were players, and a lot of these players in Chicago don't even, not even around, maybe even born when that team was. But he said Stacey King and some of the announcers and stuff were yelling and screaming at fans, and it just kind of took the air out of the building. So I kind of feel like karma kind of took over and Chicago lost that game because of the way they acted last night.
Appreciate it, Mike. I to go with what Steve Kerr said, it was shameful. It really was. And Steve Kerr, obviously, on the team that was being honored from 1996. It was the 72-10 team. The Warriors obviously broke their record back in 2016. And for Steve Kerr to be a part of that group and obviously a part of the team that won 72 and the titles with the Bulls back in the 90s, in 96, 97, and 98, it made a lot of sense to have him there. It was shameful. It was awful to have Jerry Krause, who has obviously passed away, and his widow there, and she was visibly shaken and crying. I mean, just tough, sad. I mean, awful. And no matter what you thought of Jerry Krause, and Steve Kerr addressed that in his post-game press conference. Look, the guy wasn't perfect. He was villainized by not only Michael Jordan in the Last Dance documentary, but also, if you go back and you read through the history books, it was basically Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and everybody used Krause as a punching bag. And I think fans that weren't around or alive or lived it or whatever saw The Last Dance, and I think that led to the visceral reaction last night. But it was unfortunate, and I know locally, other than the Steve Kerr component and the connection between the 73 and 72 win teams, it's not really a local story, but that's been a huge national story over the course of the last really 14, 15 hours since everything went down last night. So, yeah, really, really bad. I mean, shameful, I think, is the proper way to put it, regardless of your thoughts for Krause. That team was there to be honored and respected, and he was a part of putting that team together with MJ and Scotty and Dennis Rodman and obviously Steve Kerr and Bill Winnington and a bunch of others that were on hand. DeMar DeRozan called it out after the game. I mean, it was an ugly scene, and I can see where it let a lot of the air out of the building and led down the path of some ugliness that allowed the Warriors a pathway to get back into the game. So final minute and a half here on the Sports Leader. I want to let everybody know again to join us, myself, and Greg Silver for Dubs OT. It's a special edition of Dubs OT. It's going to be YouTube only. Yeah, pop it open. Maybe we will have a cold one or two tonight, Greg. Maybe we will have a cold one during the show. But yeah, the YouTube chat will be fired up. We'll be watching Warriors and Bucks, and we'll be ready to roll right around 7:15, 7:30 tonight on the KNBR YouTube stream as well. So yeah, join us for that. We'll go as long as the people want to go on the YouTube stream, and we'll see if the Warriors can't pull a rabbit out of the hat without Stephen Curry. Going to get some Podziemski minutes at the point guard, maybe even a Podziemski start at the point guard position as the Warriors look to try to make it 2 in a row, but get Steph Curry some much-needed rest. I know a couple of people on Twitter are saying, didn't the league outlaw this? And I mean, look, it's the first time Curry's rested. It's not a national game, which the national games, and the rules are you can't rest more than one of your star players. Curry and Clay and Draymond all fit in that category. But Draymond's still injured, Clay's playing, and Steph is the only one out. So that'll do it. We'll talk to you following the game tonight. We'll talk to you next Saturday as well. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.